Oh, Odie Hawkins. I'm here again. Are you going to read?
And I am going to read, and I'm glad to see you again.
Why, thank you.
So,
What are you going to read?
I'm going to read from a book called Brazilian Nights.
Oh, my.
Brazilian Nights. And I think it might be worthwhile to give a little of the backstory before I get into a little of the story.
Please.
It was one of those stories that was inspired by a piece of paper floating down the sidewalk that I happened to pick up one day. And on this piece of paper, there was a name written, Balonga. V as in Victor, A-L-O-N-G-A. Balonga. I kept the piece of paper for some reason. I don't know who wrote it. It's just a little piece of raggedy paper like the back of an envelope or something. And I put the paper in my pocket, and over the course of maybe a couple of weeks, I would take the paper out of my pocket and look at it and try to figure out what the importance of it was and what could happen if I made something out of it. I didn't know what to make of it at first. And then the little piece of paper with the name on it began to create a life of its own, in a manner of speaking. I illusioned a young woman, maybe in her late 20s, who was the successful owner of a stress reduction company, a business. She was an entrepreneur who had established a business of her own that would allow very busy people, very creative people, to come and learn how to reduce the stress in their lives. And over a period of time, incidentally, this happened in the town of Augusta, Georgia.
Wow.
In Augusta, Georgia. This is where I'm placing her beginnings. After 2-3 years, the business was an enormous success because there's so many people under so much stress, as we know, now and always, probably always will be. And she began to feel running a successful business was stressful.
Oh, my.
So she decided to, take advantage of her own teachings and her own promptings. And,
I guess she had a good staff. She could leave her business too.
Right. Why would you want to teach some other people how to deal with stress and find yourself stressed out? So she set up a company policy that she was the first to take advantage of, and that was to take a 2-year sabbatical away from her business to go and do some of the things she thought she might like to do with her life that wasn't being done. This is Supporter on the Rocks. I don't know whoever thought of it, but I think it was me. Japanese beer and ice cubes.
Okay.
So what I would like to do is take you through a few of her adventures, because the subtitle of the book is A Journey of Fulfillment.
How nice.
A Journey of Fulfillment.
And this book
The cover was done by a very fine photographer named Salena-Hawkins.
Okay, thank you.
And I really like it. Usually, as you know, when they show us Brazil, there's always a crowd scene in downtown Rio with people doing the samba through the streets and so forth. But I'm pretty certain that there are times when it gets dark in Brazil.
Moon and palm trees.
It was a very romantic scene. I like that.
Very good.
Dark palm trees.
Okay, and they can also be purchased at our universe, Amazon.com, Barnes & Noble.
Barnes and Nobles.
Yes, or whatever anybody wants it. Just go on Google and put in your name,
My name.
Odie Hawkins,
Oh,
and the name of the book, Brazilian Nights, and where it can be purchased, more than likely at your local bookstore.
This is where the book comes
All
from.
right. I'm looking forward to it. Let me sit down.
Okay. Well, let's start off doing it like this.
Okay.
I'll give you the prologue. Well, I've just given you the prologue. That is to say, this is what she decided to do. And she's a very interesting and a person who's interested in a lot of things. One of the things she felt she'd always like to do was go to Brazil and study the art of capoeira, specifically capoeira Angola. And she goes to the home of Angola in Brazil, which is Bahia. She goes to study with a master. The master's name is Moraes. And she doesn't master the art of capoeira Angola because very few people can, very few people do. But she becomes good enough at it to play. She leaves Angola and Brazil to go to Spain to become an apprentice to a bullfighter whose name is Machete. His name means the sword, not the sword, but the cutlass that they use to chop down sugar cane and so
Machete.
forth.
Okay.
That's who he is. He's a killer. She finds herself understanding a little bit of something about the aesthetics of bullfighting, and as a long-time member, or someone who might be called a closet aficionado. I've known about bullfighting for 50-some years, and in Chicago, where I'm from, I used to go and watch the bullfights. It came on I believe Wednesday night, Channel 34, and they showed great fighters, people like Carlos Arusa, Alfredo Leal, Luis Procuna, oh my God, fights from Spain.
There's a very old bullfighting club here in Los Angeles too.
There's an old fool, it's called Los Aficionados de Los Angeles.
Oh, okay.
It has been in existence for I think something like 75 years. And we go to meetings, this woman who's talking to me and myself, whenever they have the meetings at the Olvera restaurant in Little Mexico, downtown. I've been, like I said, closet aficionado for years. And I say closet because I've never fully come out, because I never could fully make myself believe that bullfighting was in the best interest of the animal. And I'm sure that if the bull had any choice, he certainly wouldn't find himself in a ring with a man with a sword who was trying to kill him, especially if he had the opportunity to stay out in the pasture with his harem and have a jolly good time.
Yeah.
So it's all on us. But then, like so many things that men do, we have a way of explaining it by drawing up a fantastic Bible of aesthetics about what's supposed to be done with the sword and what's supposed to be done with the cape. And the large cape is the capote, the smaller cape is called a muleta, and the banderillos and the whole ritual business of it. She goes to study with machete, gored a little bit on the cheek, I believe. I'm trying to imitate what happened when Ava Gardner went to Spain and fell in love with Luis Miguel Dominguín, or Luis Miguel Dominguín fell in love with her. And as a valuable studio property, she was put in great danger by having the bull gore on her cheek. And you see in later movies like Night of the Iguana, for example, you'll see that they had plastic surgery done, and probably the goring was so deep that they couldn't fully cover it with plastic surgery, so she wound up having a very attractive dimple in her right cheek, I believe.
Okay.
So that's one of the things she does. Valonga, this woman who occurred on a piece of paper. She leaves Spain and goes to study with a man named Armando Ba. Armando Ba is really modeled on the real life figure of a man that we once knew. I spent about, 40 years of my life following him around. He was a conguero and a bongocero, and an Afro-Cuban music master. Early on, he played with any number of people. Started with Slim Gaillard, and he went on from there to George Shearing, the blind English pianist. He went from there to Carlos Santana. If you hear things like Oye Como Va and Gitano, and a number of other pieces of music that Armando wrote and played, he was an extraordinary drum player. First of all, he was a dancer. So he would stand at the congas and literally dance. I can't vouch for it. Well, I can vouch for it because I was there. On one occasion at the jazz club over on the beach, the Lighthouse on Hermosa Beach, he started playing the drums, and the rhythm he had going on became so magical, he literally wound up dancing over to the side doing some kind of supernatural mambo, and the drums kept on playing. It might have been just a magic trick, but I can say that other people saw it too. In any case, Valonga goes to study with a man named Armando Ba, and she learns something of the complications that are involved with learning any art, but especially a rhythmic art. And Afro-Cuban music probably has one of the most complicated systems of music in the world, aside from the Hindu ragas and the tablas drum that accompany the sitar and the sarod. She goes from there. Understand, these are little trips from place to place.
I want to hear.
Well, you gotta know when to go and when to flow. Or should I say, know when to flow and when to go. She goes from Master Ba to a man named Kimio Eto in Okayama, Japan, who is a koto master. The koto, for those who may not know, looks like a long, well-polished box with strings on the top. I don't know how many strings there are, but you play it with plectrums, and the sound that you get out of it can be almost ethereal. A koto player can take you away, like the sitar, like the sarod. It's an instrument that's designed to take you into the ethereal, into the supernatural. She comes to study with Kimio Eto. She feels that she's privileged to do that. She's had a chance to, hang out with Master Moraes and Master Juízo. Juízo in Brazilian Portuguese means look out. Juízo. And so when she winds up in Japan, she feels, well, all I have to do is find out where the master lives, and I'll go there and he'll, welcome me and give me a chance to learn something about the Koto with him. The only problem is that Master Kimio Eto is sort of a monk in a way. And he decides early on that she's not spiritually qualified to learn from him. First of all, she wants what she wants when she wants it. And that's not the way to approach this master. Some masters might welcome that approach, but in this case, he doesn't. Of course, that makes her all the more anxious to want to study with him. And that makes it all the more heartbreaking when he decides not to allow her to study with him. So she has to be satisfied with having had a chance to talk to the master, who incidentally is blind. She understands that you can't always get what you want. And so she has to move on. She goes to Korea to study with Master Kim, who is an 8th degree Dan in the Korean martial art called Taekwondo. Master Kim is from the old school, and they run in the snow. It gets very cold in Korea. They run in the snow from conditioning. The dojang where she practices has a wide side door. Place looks like a big foreign car garage. And in the wintertime, they leave the doors open. In the summertime,
they close them.
They keep the doors closed.
Of course. Okay.
And she cannot figure out why they would leave the doors wide open with the blasts of the cold weather coming in, and then in the summer close the place up so that it's like an oven. Mm-hmm. She finally discovers that the thing that they're trying to teach her is that these are immaterial matters, and that you're not supposed to allow something as simple as the change of weather influence your taekwondo. For whatever reason you decided to study it, that is one of the things you should know about it. Mm-hmm. She has her moments, suffers a little injuries. Well, let me read you one little thing that happens. I call this the sparring section. She dreaded it. A sparring mate bowed with her to Master Kim, and then they bowed to each other. The guttural growl that exploded from her throat surprised her. Ugh! She was circling her opponent cautiously, looking for an opening and trying to avoid being kicked or punched. She was fighting Taekwondo. The kick she received to her rib cage surprised her more than it hurt, but she realized instantly that something was broken again. She felt tempted to stop to hold her side and collapse, but a glance at Master Kim's smirking face acted as an encouragement for her to continue the bout. The pain in her side forced her to carefully consider every move, conserve her efforts to think. She was surprised to discover weaknesses in her opponent's defense system. She was even more surprised to discover that she was outmaneuvering him. And despite the fact she wasn't strong enough to deliver a killer kick, she felt that she was holding her own. It seemed that an hour had passed before Master Kim called the sparring to a stop. Stop! The opponents bowed to each other, to Master Kim, and raced back to half lotus themselves on the sidelines. The pain of the longer rib cage sharpened with each breath, but she had completed her examination. Malonga felt her head wandering again back to the belt presentation ceremony that took place 2 weeks after the examination trial. She felt sharp pains in her side with each bow, and there were many to be made. She's sitting up in the class of the brother that master people call Brother Q, writing about the experiences she had in Korea in the Taekwondo studio.
Mm.
Brother Q takes her to dinner and explains to her that if she wants to write about everything that's been happening to her, it may hurt a lot more than the kick she got in Taekwondo, especially if she does it wrong. It has to be done right, or she should not do it at all.
Wow.
So here it is. She goes from there to, oh, I don't know. She winds up in a place called Africa. In Africa, she winds up becoming interested in the religion. One of the spiritual systems that managed to stay with us when we were transported out of our homeland, that exists all over the world, wherever there's an African presence, where there's African American, North and South, or African Central America, or African Belgium, African French. Wherever there's an African presence, there's the presence of African spiritual systems. In Brazil, there's several systems. One of them is called Katimba, another is called Candomblé, Macumba. In Trinidad, it's called Shango. In different places, it's called different names. The African American in the United States have simply labeled it the religion. One of the reasons why is that we think that this particular spiritual system predates all the rest of the spiritual systems in the world. That is not to say that it's better, but that it was first. It has to do with what happened early on in the history of the humankind, when some man or some woman came outside one night and looked up maybe at the stars or the sky and asked the question, you know, who am I in relation to all of this? So you could wind up with people adopting natural phenomena as our first gods. This is pre-Jesus and pre-Muhammad and pre-Buddha and all the rest of the other figures in religious history. So she goes to Nigeria, which is a good place to start. If she had really taken the time to do it, she would have gone to East Africa, which has by now been credited with being the homeland of the creation of the human species. And if we know something about anthropology, it'll take us straight to a little lady named Lucy. Not Eve, she came later, but Lucy. And if you ever have a chance to check her bones out, you'll notice she was small, full of piss and vinegar, and she's still with us. Let me read you a little bit of what happened in Africa. God, I'm in Africa, the place where my ancestors came from. She couldn't isolate the reason for her tears. Am I happy? Sad? What? There were times in Brazil and Bahia when a kind of sadness gripped her that had to do with knowing that the African people there, like the African people in Georgia, New York, Puerto Rico, Cuba, South Dakota, had been imported like sardines. The tears flowed, a strange kind of cry that she felt no control over, an African-American tear jag in Nigeria. She tried to ignore the tears and began to write, glancing at her outline for directions from time to time. Today is the 23rd of January, 1992, and I'm still locked up, doing hard time for a crime that I willingly admit to. I was too conscious, too lucid, too clear about what had to be done not to be imprisoned. I was the one who could clearly explain why African Americans shouldn't start waving the red, white, and blue flag of the oppressor if there was an opportunity to fly the red, black, and green flag of our aspirations. This consciousness flushed out of me with an eloquence that seemed to flow from a part of my psyche that I couldn't identify, caused me to speak my mind. I was too clear about what had to be done to free African Americans in North and South America. I took the final leap and wrote books about, to, and for my people. I think that was the thing that did it, me writing to my people in a way that only they could understand. Yes, I'm 99% certain that that was the final straw. After all, we weren't supposed to be readers, simply consumers. I pissed the dividers and conquerors off by pointing out certain seemingly obvious circumstances. If entrepreneurs were going to be given an opportunity to make money in our neighborhoods, then we should have at least equal opportunity to exploit their neighborhoods. If anyone wanted to do business with us, we should at least have the opportunity to do business with them. I spoke about this and wrote about it in a way that was non-racial and completely comprehensible. The notion of using our people as a dumping ground for all kinds of societal trash bothered me, as it has bothered every sensitive person in this country for centuries. The solution I suggested was simple and unique. We should police our own with our own police. That didn't go down at all with those who have traditionally used their police forces to funnel vices into our communities and then arrest the people who fall into their traps. I was accused of promoting segregation, preaching self-aid and independence. The attitude of the dominant culture demanded my death. And if my community, and the communities that shared my community's concern, hadn't threatened to burn America up, they would have killed me. They couldn't kill me. They didn't kill me. They locked me up for life. And today, January 23rd, 1992, I have been held captive for 20 years. They've held me captive for 20 years, but my mind remains as free as it ever was. These are thoughts she's having. She goes to the city in Nigeria called Ile-Ife and winds up talking to an African-American historian named Dr. Hope, who's modeled after a man named Dr. Franklin Hope. She learns a lot. At the end of the day, she falls in love with a man who may or may not be a real being, but someone who is a figment of her imagination. Because by now, after having been completely relieved of the stress that people feel just doing what they have to do all the time, she winds up having an imagination that could conjure up the kind of man she wanted to have in her life. And at the end of the day, they go to a place on the banks of the Black Grass River where everything is beautiful and in harmony, because he tells her, that's where I live, that's where I want to take you. And she asks, when do we leave? And he tells her, we're on our way now. That's a sketchy, sort of introduction to Brazilian Nights.
Well, what type of person would like to read it? But who would you encourage?
Let me put it to you this way. I haven't read a book that I thought I might not like to read. So having said that, I'm going to put this one down and go and do some reading.
Sounds like a good idea. I would suggest that, career women probably, to encourage them to reach out from their job to do more things for themselves personally, if they can.
It's very, very difficult under the circumstances we live in today's world, because there are very, very few people who are doing what they would like to do. So many of us are doing what we have to do, and you have to give them credit for being able to go through all that and still have the desire to do what they want to do.
Yes.
Sometimes being forced to do what you have to do can kill off your desire to do what you want to do. And I don't want to become too philosophical about it, but the world is filled more and more with people who are becoming less human and more robotic, because that's what they feel they have to be. I mean, you see them walk in front of your car every day. They become addicted to this cyberware. Their minds have been brain hacked. They can't think for themselves. They no longer know how to spell, because the spell check is taking up the slack for them. They don't want to deal with anything having to do with humanism. They would rather deal with other things.
And so they cease having adventures. That's
But
sad.
hopefully they will.
Check out Brazilian Night, which is also an ebook.
Oh, is that right?
Yes, it can be purchased as an ebook.
So why am I sitting here reading?
Well, reading paper can be very relaxing and nice.
Thank you for
especially
inviting me to
sometimes.
do another reading.
Yes.
See you tomorrow.
See you tomorrow. And again, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, or the local bookstore with the title Brazilian Nights and the author, Odie Hawkins. Until tomorrow. Ciao.